Hey guys, how's it going? I finally have an opportunity to answer these incredible questions that you have reached out to me and asked in the beginning of September. Actually, it was September 1st. I posted on my YouTube channel in the community tab, reaching out to you guys, seeing if anyone had any crochet related questions. And you guys had some incredible crochet related questions that actually took me a second to answer. I wanted to do a lot of research, answer your questions completely, and to make sure that I was prepared and ready for any way that question may have been asked or directed. I wanted to answer it in all ways possible. Also, I collected so many pictures that you guys have sent in to me, either through email directly, or if you sent or tagged me in Instagram or Facebook. I included a bunch of pictures in a slideshow performance at the very end of this video, and so make sure you stick around to the very end to see that, see if maybe your picture actually got included in the slideshow, and also to just see everybody's incredible work. I am just so excited to show off all of the pictures people sent in to me. I love seeing your creativity. I love seeing all of your hard work. I love seeing just you guys so excited about crochet. It's so cool. It's so cool. So please stick around to the very end to see the slideshow. Also, there are some incredible questions that I got asked with this round of Q&A. So please stick around to hear all of the questions that were asked. And it might be a question that you thought you or never even thought to ask, but now that somebody's asked it, you're like, yeah, what would I do? All right, let's go ahead and get started. So my very first question here was from Claro V, and their question was, I was wondering how to join granny squares. Sides are very different, so I always lose stitches behind. I know it's a very basic question, but I don't understand how to do it with knitting either. Another question is how to make straighter sides. Okay, so a lot of these questions that I were asked, there was open to different, a lot of the questions could be answered in different ways. They could be interpreted in different ways. And so I wanted to just go ahead and answer in all ways that I could interpret this question, so that way I can make sure I cover all bases and make sure that I answer the question that they have so they can move on. Okay, so first of all, joining granny squares. I actually do have an amazing video that I created with 7 different techniques on how to join granny squares, and it's something that I put a lot of thought in, like what questions could somebody possibly have with joining granny squares. So in my video, for each of the 7 techniques that I show you on how to join, I show you how to join 2 squares together. Then I show you how to join more squares once you've reached the end of those 2 and need to keep going. And then I also show you how to cross join once you've made all of your straight lines, how you would cross join over those joins to finish off your square join. So, and I did that with all 7, so that way if you chose to use one technique, you would know how to do every step of the way, and I tried to answer all questions you could possibly have. So there's that video, and I'll have that video in the description section and comment section below this video. So if you want to see it, you can just click on that link and it'll take you straight to that video real quick and easy, so you're not having to find it. But if your question was more so in relation to maybe you have 2 granny squares that were made completely differently, and they have a different number of stitches on their sides. So when you go to join them together, it's not aligning. They're not lining up, and you're finding yourself with wonky sides. They're not staying straight, and it's a big issue. So this is what I would do if I was joining 2 granny squares that were made completely different and had a different number of stitches on their sides. First, and most important, is you need to make sure that these 2 squares are the same size, at least, that both of them are 6 inches wide by 6 inches long, or both of them are 8 inches wide by 8 inches long. No matter what the size is, they both need to be the same size, so that way they can align with each other. All right, and then what I would do is I would take the 2 granny squares and I would put them together so that they are perfectly aligned on top and bottom, that they are staying like flat lined together. clamp it in some way so it cannot shift. I've tried using stitch markers to keep granny squares together, and I am not successful with that. I don't like using stitch markers to hold granny squares together because there's still some shifting that can happen. They're too loose. But if you can grab some kind of clamp or something to keep them from shifting, do that. And then I would join with a method that doesn't require a 1-to-1 stitch ratio, because that's not going to work for this situation. So I would recommend, if you want to do a single crochet join or a slip stitch join, but maybe even just the whip stitch join is going to be the easiest for you to do in this situation. A whip stitch join is where you take yarn, you take a yarn needle or tapestry needle, and then you tie a knot on one end of the two granny squares to keep them together at their ends. And then you just go over, sew, go over, sew, go over, sew. And you just kind of join it that way all the way up. And then you're not looking at, oh, am I getting this stitch to this stitch, this stitch to this stitch? It's more so I'm keeping these together, and we're just going to quickly like join them together. Okay, we're not necessarily looking at the stitches, we're just joining. And that will work. It will work 100%. Just pick a yarn that I think would camouflage in if you're doing the whip stitch. That way it can be the most flattering. But yeah, that is the other way I would answer that question. And then the second part of your question was saying straighter sides. You're having a hard time keeping your sides straight. And that is another question that I could answer in multiple different ways. If you're referring to the sides of all your work, and that is including projects where it's just row after row after row, or whatever you're doing, then I do have a video I've created on reasons why somebody would not have straight sides, and also tips that somebody could utilize to ensure or best attempt to have straight sides. A lot of it comes with practice. A lot of it comes from making sure you have the same number of stitches in every row. A lot of it comes from making sure that that first stitch and that last stitch are hitting where they should be hitting. And I have some tips in this video that could really help. And again, that's another video that I will put in the comment section and description section below that you can click on and watch and get those tips. Now, if that question for straight sides was in regards to your project where you're joining granny squares together, and maybe you're trying to make a border, or you're noticing you put the squares together but the sides are not straight, they're uneven, that will also come with the joining process and making sure you are keeping everything aligned and that things aren't shifting while you're joining. So go slow, take care in that process to make sure that things aren't shifting. But I also put this together for you to try to show you what I would do to work the sides of your granny square joined project. So what I have here, I've already joined these two together. I have a single crochet border across the top. I'm about to go over where they are joined. I'm going to single crochet in that first chain or the leftover chain from the corner. I'm going to single crochet into the join, and then I'm going to single crochet into the leftover chain from the other corner, and then continue on. And that is how I'm going to keep the sides of my work straight for a granny square join. What I'm looking for is everything to just lay flat. And everything lays flat. And then when I go for round 2, it will help to bring that level, that stitch level, so that way everything is straight here. Really neat, right? If I were to miss that stitch, let's go back. If I were to work this border, so here's that leftover chain. If I were to skip over that join and just find the next leftover chain and work and keep going, what will happen is that skipped section right there of the join it will cause the two sides of the square to pull in, and you're going to end up getting this uneven kind of bow right there. Now it's going to be subtle, and you can probably block the project straight. I mean, you could fix that for sure. But yeah, it's going to be an issue. So just my recommendation would be to work a stitch in that join. Give it that space so that way it can lay flat, and then continue on. So that is how I would keep my side straight for a granny square joined project. All right, so I hope I answered all of your questions the best way possible and completely. The next question I have on here is from Elizabeth, and Elizabeth asks, I'm curious if you could do a tutorial on sleeves, sleeveless holes, and then attaching sleeves. Also, can you recommend a sizer for granny squares? I thought this was really interesting. Most of the questions that I received were like two-part questions. And I was like, all right, give me all your questions. Okay, so sleeves. When it comes to projects, particularly tops, where they are making the sleeves separate and then joining the sleeves onto the garment. I see this often. I've done it for like stuffed animals. I haven't done it for a top per se because I'm still building up my repertoire and experience with tops, but I will be making a top here soon where I will go ahead and make the sleeves apart and separate and then join the sleeves on, just to show you how that is done. But let me try to talk you through it, I guess, where my brain is at, how I would do it if I were making a top where the sleeves were made separate, and how I would join them on. A lot of times when we're following a pattern where the sleeves are made separate, the sleeves are made kind of in this weird like upside down V shape. I know there's like a trapezoid. I know there's a name for the shape, and I'm embarrassed that I can't think of it right now, but name of the shape. All right, so you make it like this, right? So the upper part is more so where the shoulder is, and the lower part where my elbows are is more where your hand is going to go through, your wrist is going to go through. So you make this shape. Then what you're going to do is you're going to fold that shape in half and then join the side together, okay? When you do this, watch for the right side of the work and the wrong side of the work. The right side of the work is the side that you want presented out to everybody, that you're going to have everybody see. It's on the outside. That's the right side. The wrong side of the work is what's going to be on the inside. So the wrong side would be what's on the inside. Okay. And generally you'll look at both sides, and one will be obviously the side that you want to be presented to everybody, and the other side will be the side you kind of want to hide or go on the inside. Sometimes both sides look identical, and if that's the case, that's awesome. So find the right side. Have the right side facing up. Fold your sleeve so that the right side is on the inside. Join the sleeve inside out, okay? And then take the sleeve and bring it to your torso part of the garment, the middle part, the torso part of the garment. Have the torso part be flipped inside out also. That way when we join the sleeve to the torso, everything is inside out. Now this is important because when we do our join, one, it's going to be a little messy. Two, when we join, it usually will create this peak, and we want the peak to be on the inside. So when we flip it inside out or right side out, it'll have this really nice kind of ridge that looks really clean, and it's lays more flat and is more smooth, and it just looks more professional. So we want to join the whole thing inside out, ideally. Okay. Now, depending on how the sleeve is made, sometimes the sleeve is made like this, where my elbows are still where my hand would go, the wrist part of the sleeve, and my fingers are more of the top of where the shoulder is. So there's some sleeves that are made a little offset. So when you join it to the garment, you got like the shoulder and the armpit. When you join it to the garment, first pin it in place so that way it doesn't shift and all of a sudden the armpit is facing forward. You don't want that to happen. So pin it in place so that way you can just quickly join it together. Okay. So that's also important, making sure the taller part is on the top where the shoulder is and the shorter part is on the bottom where the armpit is. Because if you did the reverse, you'd basically be attaching the arm going like this. And that's not ideal. We don't like that. It's not going to work so well. Okay, so anyways, that's how I would do it. I would attach it, join it inside out. Then once everything was attached and ends were woven in, then I would flip everything outside right and it will look good. It'll be done and it'll look as good as it can look. Right, so I hope that helps. And yes, I'm hoping to make a tutorial where I do all that in the tutorial to show you a more visual example. But for now, I'm hoping that my verbal explanation will help. I hope that helps, Elizabeth. Okay, the second part of your question, Elizabeth, was, do I recommend a sizer for granny squares? Now, I've asked quite a few people. I asked my crafters gathering. I've looked it up, and I'm not exactly sure what a granny square sizer is. If you know what a granny square sizer is, please put your answer in the comment section below and educate even me, because I couldn't figure out what a granny square sizer is. The best thing I could think of was blocking tool. I was like, that's the only thing I can think of is if you take your granny square and you block it, then you're basically kind of like finishing size it. And so that's kind of where my brain went. So I took it as blocking tool. Now, when it comes to blocking tools, there's two that I really, really like. The first one is the foam mat with the stainless steel T-pins, but the foam mat having the grid on it, big deal, big deal. That way you can align everything, make sure everything is proportional. When you're aligning the sides of your squares, you can get them all in line and like peg it down and it's all straight, and you know that if you hit it within the dimensions that each side is the same length. So I really, really like foam mats that have the grids on them. I like those a lot. However, I also like the foam mats because they have like the puzzle pieces looking things on the side, so you could keep joining more and more foam pieces if you wanted to, and you could get this huge like blocking thing if you wanted to that could fit a whole room if you wanted to. They could just keep adding to each other. You just keep buying more foam pieces and keep adding to it and make it as big as you want. So I think that's really neat too, that it doesn't have a stopping point. It just keeps going. All right, the other one that I really like is a wooden blocking tool with those wooden pegs, because those are so strong. There's sometimes that I've tried blocking on the foam mats and the stainless steel T-pins, they bend. They aren't able to like stay as strong as I'd like them to. And also, if you have the wood blocking tool with the pegs, you can stack your granny squares on top of each other and just let them all be the same size that way, because you're stacking on top of each other, and I think that's really cool. So I will go ahead and put links to those two types of blocking tools in the comment section and description section below this video to help you out, to be like, this is what I really like, what I would use if you would like my recommendation. All right, so next question is Sandra O. Sandra, your question says, I was wondering how to keep track when working in continuous rounds. I was making a toy and I lost track of place and your stitch marker fell out. Oh no. Oh no. And then you couldn't see where the round began or ended. I have been there and I understand your frustration. Is there a little trick that I could do? Thanks for answering my question. So yes, I actually do have a trick that I used before I even ever used stitch markers. And I call it my tail row marker. And let me show you how I do it. In fact, if you check out some of my stuffed animal videos or my amigurumi videos on my channel, I use this technique a lot with my amigurumi. And it might help you out to see me use it in action. But let me go ahead and show you how I would do it just right here real quick. Just quick demonstration for you. Okay, so take the size of the stuffed animal you are making, the body part of the stuffed animal you're making. So if you're making the head or you're making the body or the torso section, and take the body section that you're making, have the tail of your yarn be that size plus about 2 inches. Give yourself extra room because it doesn't hurt to give you some extra room. Great, so long tail, and then create your slip knot. Slip knot, attach your crochet hook, and then you would start your chain 2 method or your chain 4 method, or however you're starting your stuffed animal. You could even do this with the magic ring. So here's the tail, long tail, 2 fingers, wrap around your 2 fingers, around your fingers, come up to that X shape, make an X, pinch, crochet hook. Under the tight one, grab the loose one, pull it through, remove your fingers, but keep that pinch so it doesn't undo itself. And then just slip stitch, yarn over, slip stitch, and now you can move your fingers. now it's the circle, it's the ring, but we still have the long tail, and then you'd work your stitches in that ring and then pull the tail tight and be off and going. I like the chain 2 method though, so I'm starting with that. Okay, long tail, slip knot, crochet hook, chain 2, 1, 2. Now for just the sake of getting through round 1, I'm going to make 6 single crochets in the first chain. It's very, very typical. Crochet hook's a little big though. 1, 5, and 6. Perfect. Okay, so I just made my 6 single crochet stitches for round 1. That's how the pattern would read. And okay, so now I've reached the end. If I had a stitch marker, I would put the stitch marker in that 6th single crochet stitch to mark that was the last stitch of the round. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this really long tail that I have here, and I'm going to yarn over the really long tail and pull the tail through the loop on my crochet hook, reinsert my crochet hook back into that loop, and that tail marks the last stitch of my round. My round has now been marked. All right, let's move on to round 2. So typically round 2 would be increase single crochet in each stitch around. So let's go ahead and do that real quick, which just means making 2 single crochet stitches in each stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 11, and 12. Now it is a good idea to count when doing amigurumi just to make sure that you don't miss a stitch. Super important. But in this case, the other reason, aside from me knowing I've reached 12 single crochet stitches, is that in the next stitch, I have a tail sticking out of it. If you look closely in that V-stitch, my tail is sticking out of that V-stitch. That means that was the very first stitch or very last stitch of the last round, but very first stitch that I made for this round. So I'm going to not put any stitch in that stitch space yet. I need to take that tail, that row marker tail that's sticking out of that stitch, I need to yarn it over and pull it through my last stitch of round 2. And now I have marked off round 2. It's done. So this tail will tell you when you've reached the end of a round. Okay, and then you will go and enter into that same stitch that the tail is sticking out of, and that'll be your first stitch. And you'll just keep going in that regard, working your way all the way around to that last V-stitch right before the V-stitch with the tail sticking out of it. That's your last stitch space. Then you'll just yarn over and pull this tail through the loop to close off that round. And honestly, it works great because you just allow the tail to follow along with you with your work. It just carries along with you. Now, I will say that it does, you can see the tail following up the side of the work. In those instances, I would take that side where you could see the tail going up the side of the work, and I'd put that in the back so it's hidden, it's not seen with the front and everything you want people to see. Or if you're going to add details to the stuffed animal, you can add that detail over this part of the stuffed animal where you can see the tail traveling up the side of the work. Just put something over it to cover it up. The other thing you can do if you really, really want to is once you get to the very end and you're ready to tie everything off, you can grab your yarn needle or tapestry needle and you can come through and you can pull that tail back through all of the rounds and then just come to the end, weave that tail in and be done, and you won't have that tail following up the side of the work, and it's like the seamless work. It's really cool. So that is the trick that I like to use, using my tail of my yarn as my round marker, and then it can't fall off like a stitch marker can, and it's like attached to the work. You know what I mean? So yeah, I really like that technique. And like I said, if you don't like the look of the tail traveling all the way up the side, there is that other, technique where you can just take the tail out and weave it in and you don't have to worry about it. So I hope you like that. I hope it works for you. Next question. Let me see. Here I got, okay, so some of the names were like YouTube names or the names that they're not your actual name. Sabgoed, 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 I think is what it is. And here's the question. My question, I buy my yarn from Hobby Lobby, but they don't number their yarns like 4 or 5. How do you tell when there's a yarn that doesn't have a number on it what the number is? Now, this I thought was a great question. I do have some Hobby Lobby yarn, and Hobby Lobby does label their yarn and their size, but their yarn sizes are super, super itty bitty teeny tiny. So let me show you what it looks like. There we go. If you go to the part of the yarn label that says like net and ounces, grams, yards, meters, and then what the yarn's made out of, in this case, 97 acrylic, 3 polyester, then below that, you'll see the washing or care instructions. And to begin the washing or care instructions, really small, that is the yarn size right there. So this is a 5 bulky. So it is very small, very small. And it's on all their yarn labels. So here I even have this super thick jumbo yarn. Again, come to the back of the label where it says ounces, grams, yards, and meters. What it's made of, 100% polyester in this case. Care instructions to begin, really small, super tiny, size 7 jumbo. So yes, it's very different than, say, here I have a yarn label from Karen Simply Soft, and boom, their size is humongous, very huge in comparison. So it is labeled, it's just super small, and I can see how it can be overlooked or unseen or hidden in some way. But I did like this question in the sense of, hey, that is a great question. What if you go to a garage sale and find some beautiful yarn, but it's missing its yarn label? Or what if somebody gives you yarn, they just gift you yarn, and the yarn does not have a yarn label? So how would you figure out what size that yarn was, right? So you would know what crochet hook to use it with it, or what project would best to be used with it. All of that information that can be super important. And it dawned on me, the technique it's so cool, and I'm super excited to be able to actually show you this technique. So have you ever heard me say WPI? Generally, it'll happen when I'm like, size 4 weight, worsted medium, Aran, 10, 12 ply, or 8 WPI. You know what I'm saying? So WPI stands for wraps per inch. It's a way of measuring yarn in certain locations. This is how they will figure out what size the yarn is. Instead of saying it's a size 4 weight yarn, they'll say it's this many reps per inch. And that's actually really cool because you can decipher it yourself. So here I have a yarn, and I'm gonna use a ruler, but really you could use anything. You could use the end of a crochet hook and wrap around the end of a crochet hook, or you could use a knitting needle and wrap around a knitting needle. You could really use anything, but I appreciate the ruler because it helps me stay on track. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to drape your yarn in line with one of the inches. So it really doesn't matter where you start. I'm just going to use 10 because it's at the end here and it's easier for me to wrap. And then just start wrapping. Try not to be super tight. We want to keep the width of the yarn as natural as possible. And just don't overlap. Be careful not to overlap. Just placing the strands in line with each other. And fill a 1-inch space. And there we go. I filled a 1-inch space. Now what you're going to do is you're going to count how many wraps that you did. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I did 11 wraps. Cool. Then you would go to this chart, and I found this chart, and I'm super excited about it. I'm going to actually place this chart in my website under resources. I'm really hoping to be a resource center for you. So if you have any questions on charts or sizes or certain things, reach out to me. And if I can find it and make it happen for you, I would love to place a chart on my website so that way you can go there for resources. And just literally my website, crochetwithtiffany.com. Click resources and see all my charts that I have right there. This will be in there. So this is what the chart will look like. It has all the yarn sizes, including 0 lace, all the way up to a size 7 jumbo. In the chart, it'll say the number of plies and the numbers of wraps per inch. Now this is where we want to look, wraps per inch. Now I said I had 11. Now 11, if I look here at the size 3 and the size 4, check out the size 3. Size 3 says that there's 11 to 15 wraps per inch for a size 3 weight yarn. But then if you come over here, a size 4 weight yarn says 9 to 12 wraps. And you're like, wait a second. If 11 wraps is a size 3, but 9, 10, 11, 12 count as a size 4, there's an overlap there. Yes. Have you ever heard of anybody say a heavy size 3 weight or a light size 4 weight? That's what we're getting at here. The number of wraps per inch, the yarn itself can be slightly thicker or slightly thinner for its weight yarn. So size 4 weight, size 3 weight yarn. This right here, because there's 11, and the 11 is in 2 categories, it's kind of in that cutoff mark for a size 3, size 4 in between there. I would say that would define this as a heavy 3 or a light 4, which makes sense because when I see this label, and I do have a yarn label for this yarn, it does label it as a size 4 weight yarn, but it looks on the thin side compared to some of the other size 4 weight yarns that I have played with and used. So pretty cool, right? So now I would know that that's pretty much what it would identify as. I'd be able to figure out with that information what crochet hook would be best used with that yarn and be able to use it. So I thought that was neat, and I hope that that helps and made sense, and now you know that trick and how to figure out yarn that has no yarn label. Okay, so moving on. Gina, your question asks, can you show a tutorial on how to start a shawl using crochet? I'm new to crochet and can't quite figure it out. All right, so this was a question that was very open-ended because there's a lot of shawls that you could create. I literally went and researched this and found, I wrote these down. Like all these right here are all different shapes of shawls. So I'm like, a shawl or a triangle shawl starting in the top middle, and even then they're made so differently depending on how deep you want the point to be. Then there's the square shawl, the stole shawl, which is like a long rectangle, the half circle, the full circle, the star, the crescent, the polygon, the triangle with two triangles with a center panel. There's something called a kite, and then there's also the triangle sideways, or also known as the asymmetrical shawl. So depending on what shawl you want to make, there's very different starting points for all of them. And so that one, it's hard for me to figure out what you want, because it could be, I could start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different ways. I really could. But what I'm thinking that you're getting at is the most common type of shawl, and that's where it's a triangle shawl, started in the top middle and then just worked out and down. So like worked in all three sides. And this is one way of doing it. There's so many ways. So please, I'm going to explain one way. But again, this is just one way of doing it. So this is how I would answer the shawl question, and just doing a really quick, simple shawl design here, starting at the top middle, and working my way. So starting with the tail long enough for me to weave in my end, create a slip knot, attach my crochet hook. I'm going to start by chaining 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip stitch into the very first chain to create a ring or a circle. Great, move that tail out of the way. Perfect. So I'm going to start row 1. Now again, this is just something I'm whipping up really quick. You can interpret however you like to do it best, but start row 1 by chaining 2. 1, 2. That chain 2 counts as your first double crochet stitch. Then make 4 double crochet stitches inside that circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Chain 2. 1, 2, and 5 more double crochet stitches inside that circle. So 1, 4. Awesome. Okay, so that is row 1. 5 double crochets, chain 2, 5 double crochets. Now row 2 is going to be something different that I have learned through a lot of experience, and something that I would prefer to do. So this is what I would do, is chain 2, 1, 2, turn your work. That chain 2 counts as your first double crochet stitch. Then make 2 more double crochet stitches in that first stitch space. 1, 2, so technically there are 3 double crochet stitches there. Then make 1 double crochet stitch on top of each double crochet stitch. Great. In that chain 2 space, make a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. Awesome. And then make 1 double crochet stitch all the way up on every double crochet stitch to the last stitch space. So the last stitch space will be the chain 2. So in that top chain of the chain 2, make 3 double crochet stitches. Now if that's too hard to see that chain, and I get that a lot, is people saying it's hard for me to work in the chain, just make your 3 double crochet stitches between that last double crochet stitch and the chain 2, and that'll be fine. 1, 2, 3, and then repeat row 2 as many times as you want to finish off your pattern. Just start by chaining 2, turning your work, making 2 double crochet stitches in that first stitch space, making 1 double crochet stitch in each double crochet stitch down in that chain 2 section, making a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, then make 1 double crochet stitch in each double crochet stitch all the way up. In that last stitch or turning chain, or between that double crochet and the turning chain, make 3 double crochet stitches and then repeat. What you will see when you are working is one of 2 things. One, if your stitches are on the looser side, your shawl may start to do this like angel wing thing where it'll start curling upward this way. So when it's at the base, when this part is at the base of your neck, it's going to actually kind of do this like angel wing thing and come forward over you. Or the top of your work is going to flatten out and lay completely flat. Now, one thing I noticed with my first shawl video, I do recommend you checking out, is the my first shawl video that I made. In that pattern, it's pretty close to what I did here, except for I make 2 double crochet stitches in the first and last stitch space. And if your stitches are looser, then the top of the shawl will lay flat. But what I get a lot of comments on is that the top of the shawl kind of domes a little bit, and it's more like that shape on the top instead of flat. You can fix that pretty close to flattening out the top by blocking your shawl. That'll help, but a lot of times it does have like that dome shape that people don't like. So to avoid that dome shape on the top of your shawl that is supposed to be flat, do this method with the 3 double crochet stitches in that first and last stitch instead of 2. It helps a lot. All right. Right, next question is Adina, Adiana, Adeana, Adiana. Your question is, I was wondering what type of yarn and how long should a table runner be if I do a moss stitch? Also, what number on the chain stitch would be? Now, so this is a lot involved in this question. 1, you want to know the type of yarn. 2, you want to know the size of the table runner you should make. And 3, you want to use the moss stitch and you want to know how many chains you need to chain to make your table runner. That's a lot. So here's what I'm going to do to break down this question. First, the yarn that I recommend that you use for a table runner is either 100% cotton or a cotton blend, because cotton is absorbent, it's going to be the best with heat, it's going to be the best with moisture, it's going to be overall best for your table. Now, 100% cotton yarn can be anything from crochet lace is 100% cotton, or there's size 3 weight yarns that I've seen that are 100% cotton, or just a cotton blend too, because you're going to want something that's drapey, is soft, and is detailed. You can add detail to it to make it very beautiful for your table. When it comes to the how long should it be, I did find a chart, and the chart basically said the table runner technically should run or drape 6 to 12, either be in line with your table or hang 6 inches off of each side of your table, or hang 12 inches off the side of each side of your table. So it depends on what you want to do. Secondly, it depends on what table that you want to put your table runner on. There's so many different types of or sizes of tables, types of tables. They have round tables, square tables, rectangle tables. So, and then different lengths of these tables, especially if you have wings that you add or take away. So that is going to be something that's completely up to you. I did notice, though, that all of these table runners that were in this chart measured 14 inches wide. So it was 14 inches wide, and then however long you needed it to be for your specific table. Then when it comes to how many chains you're going to need to chain in order to create or use the moss stitch to create your table runner, I'm going to have you watch my video, How Many Chains Do I Need? in that video, I'm talking more specifically for blankets, but when you're just using back and forth rows, it's the exact same technique. And it's a technique, it's a number, unfortunately, I cannot give to you because there's so many variables that I could give you a number and it could be completely wrong. So it would depend on the yarn you use, the size of the yarn you use, the type of yarn that you use. It would depend on the crochet hook that you're using, even the type of crochet hook that you're using and how loose or tight your yarn tension would be for your stitches. So I can, however, provide you with the tool of figuring that out for yourself, and that is to check out my video on how many chains do I need, and I will put that video in the description section and comment section below this video for you. Okay, next question. Anna, in your intro, you show a crochet rug. Is there a tutorial for that rug? Yes. I only have 2 rugs or mats, and one is oval, and it's the oval cable stitch rug, and I do have a tutorial for that, and it is amazing. I love that rug, and so you're gonna have to check that out. I'll put that in the description section below, comment section below, a link to that video. And there's also the bath mat that I did. So I don't know which rug you saw, but it's definitely one of those 2 because those are the only 2 I got. So I'll make sure I got both of those. I'm pretty sure you're probably thinking of the oval rug with the cable stitch. And yeah, I'll make sure I hook you up with a link. All right, IB Serenity. How do you block things made with roving style acrylic yarn? Great question, because roving is it's so unruly. It's just the fibers in line with each other. They haven't been spun and tightly together. So everything is kind of unruly. So when it comes to blocking that, I had to research that to make sure I gave you a really good answer. And what I found was cold blocking is what was recommended. Cold blocking is, I'm going to just read this off. I found it from handknitting.com/yarn-blocking. I'll cite my source in the description section below. But this is what they said. Cold blocking is ideal for yarn that can't withstand immersion or heat. Pin the pieces into the blocking board, taking the time to shape it properly. So be careful with this work because again, it's roving yarn, not necessarily a yarn that has been plied or twisted. Rearrange the edges if necessary. Leave the piece undisturbed until it dries completely. Oh, mist it until so you're just going to lightly mist it with cold water. Lightly mist it with cold water until the piece is wet. Flatten out lumps and rearrange the edges if necessary. Leave the piece undisturbed until it dries completely. You can use a fan to speed up the process if you need to. So there you go. I hope that helps. Because yeah, I could see how I would be just definitely paying more attention, be more aware of roving yarn than just a regular yarn that I would buy off of the store that has been twisted. Next question, Dawn. Hi, I'm wondering how to hide the yarn going up the side of a scarf. Must a border be put around it? I'm using 2 different colors and trying to avoid cutting and weaving every row. Okay, so I mentioned to you, Dawn, I did answer that question. I talked about the stranding technique, but I wanted to show you, and forgive me with these colors. They're not compatible at all. They're probably going to look completely awful together, but you will be able to see what I'm doing. All right, let me work up my first row. I'm just doing some single crochet stitches. So Dawn, really whatever you're using for, whatever stitch you're using for your scarf or project. Okay, so let's say I just reached the end of my row. I want to switch colors. So I'm just gonna drop the color I finished with. I'm gonna grab my second color, taking the small tail, wrapping it around my finger, twisting my finger, removing my finger, so now there's like this loop. That, taking the yarn, going underneath through the loop, pinching, pulling. Okay, make small. Okay, so if I were changing colors, what I would do, I'm going to back this up. So that way there's 2 loops. Placing the loop of the second color on my crochet hook, pulling that loop through the 2 loops of color A, pull color A tight. That way I have like a clean color change. Chain 1, turning chain, and turn my work. Then I'm going to go about working every stitch as normal with the new color. Speeding up through this. Chain 1, turning work, going back. Okay, so when I come to the end here, going to yarn or insert my crochet hook into the last stitch space, yarn over, pull through. So there's 2 loops on my crochet hook. I'm going to drop the yellow, pick up color A or the pink color, yarn over the pink color, pull that color through the 2 loops on my crochet hook, chain 1 and turn. And what I did is I basically just brought that color up, just carried it up the side of my work. And then I won't necessarily have to weave in any ends or cut yarn, weave in any ends. I would probably want to put a border around this to hide that end. Now, if you were talking about wanting to find a way to conceal this, to hide this, the other thing that you could do is take the tail of the color, instead of just dropping it, we are going to crochet on top of it. So kind of bring that yarn and lay it over the stitches, okay? And then crochet, did I chain 1? Yep, I chained 1. And then crochet over it, and this is known as stranding, when you crochet over it. Okay. Now honestly, this technique is great for stranding because the color, or in this row, the color just kind of blends in and you cannot see it, that you have single crocheted over that color, because it camouflages in with the row before. And if you're doing like every row is a different color, then you could chain 1 with the new color, turn your work, and just flip it so that way you lay the pink or same color on top of the same color, and then you would go new color. And then there's nothing for you to weave in. You're just literally carrying the yarn along with you the whole time. The only time when I think it would become a little bit of an eyesore is if you do this. Maybe you wanted 2 rows of pink. So you yarn over, you turn, you bring that yellow along with you, and you're crocheting over the yellow. There you go. Okay, honestly, you can't really see it. It did a really good job covering up the yellow. So I think that's okay, actually. Sometimes, depending on the 2 colors that you work, you can actually see the second color through the stitches, or the first color through the stitches of the second color. And sometimes you can't, and it hides really well. And so in this case, changing color, so backing it up. There we go. 2 loops, new color, pull through, chain 1, turn, lay that color flat on the work, and then single crochet over it and go on. So that could look really cool, Dawn. If this is what you're doing for your scarf, I think it's a neat idea. I hope that helps. And then you have a very clean side here and nothing to weave in. That was such a crazy Q&A video. I had so much fun answering your questions. You guys had some incredible questions, and that was just fun answering them to the fullest ability I could. I tried to show demonstrations. I tried to bring in some really good examples to explain the answers the best that I could, and yeah, those were some great questions. So thank you so much for asking those. If you liked this video, please push that thumbs up button. It's great feedback for me and lets me know what you thought of this video. If you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. I have some great holiday videos coming up, some regular videos I think you're really gonna love, and some are one video in particular that is, it's a video that is from my childhood that I'm bringing a project out that I haven't been able to make yet, and it's just going to be amazing, and I hope that you love it. Check out my membership program if you haven't yet already. Maybe give a level a try, see if you like it. I have a couple levels there that I think you'll really enjoy. If you like this video, let's keep it going. Keep watching and crocheting together. I have a playlist for you right here that you've got to take a peek at. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, guys, letting me answer all these questions with you. I hope you have the best day, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.